Wonderful to hear. All right, well, I'm calling the meeting to order, 6:35 p.m. First item up, should we introduce? I don't see it on the agenda, so it feels a little awkward to just jump in. Welcome, Clarissa. We have a new member of our Equity Commission. You wanted to say a quick intro?
Yeah. My name is Clarissa Fusilier. I also answered by Chloe. Been here in the Austin area was 20 years, been 10 of them here and about 9 of them here in Pflugerville. And I am a program manager and operations manager at numerous different companies as a consultant. And yeah, just really happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much and welcome. All right, moving on to citizens communication. Do we have any citizens communication?
No.
Does not appear so. All right. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was August 12th, 2024. I had a question on them actually.
Yeah.
And I don't have them in front of me, but where there was the discussion about the voter registration events, I think the question was raised about like who coordinates them, and there's a reference to each department. I was like, we didn't talk departments. I think it was just like on the commission basically to arrange the voter registration events, I thought. So the reference to departments just kind of caught me off guard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't see it on.
Did I imagine that? I don't think I imagined that. I did read the minutes and saw that in there. Let me find it.
Am I missing a page? No.
I don't see it in
Oh,
here.
I am. I'm missing a page.
I don't see it in here.
Yeah.
So that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, sorry, I am missing a page.
Thank you so much.
Okay, it's on. It's just my packet. It's missing a page.
No, mine is.
Okay.
No, I think mine is too.
Really?
That's probably the only complete one. Oh, you have 3.
I'll pass it around.
Do you have 3?
This is the agenda. And this on the back.
Oh yeah, yours is thicker.
Unless expired, which can take place. Post them.
Oh yeah, there's page 2.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
All right.
So right here?
Yes.
Okay. Just take that out?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think we basically concluded that like we needed to help coordinate them.
Sorry, I missed a whole page for you guys.
We talked about voter registration and having voter registration at city events, and the city came back with some proposed dates, like where that could happen. And my question was about like who was responsible for coordinating, like making it happen.
Yeah.
And my understanding was like it was on us to help facilitate that process with organizations in the community that provide for nonpartisan voter registration.
Okay.
But the minutes reference that each department is responsible, so it was just a confusing note.
Gotcha.
So asking for that to be struck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have to make a motion and all that?
Yes, to approve the minutes as
Yes.
amended.
So can someone make a motion for us to approve the minutes as amended? Katrina? Second?
I second.
All right. Everyone in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Do you have page 2?
Yeah.
All right. Item 4A is the discussion of listening sessions. Brianna?
Good evening.
Yeah. Good after evening.
Hi, I'm Brianna Higgins. I'm a special projects manager for the city manager's office. And it really isn't too much to discuss about the listening sessions. I'll kind of give a quick overview so that you're caught up. Of course, we've been doing, for the past year, this Equity Commission has been working on listening sessions. The intent is that the Equity Commission goes out into the community and asks a set of 10 questions that range from what do you love about Pflugerville, what needs to change, what do we need to do better, what do you hope doesn't change, and a word for the future of what you hope Pflugerville looks like. It's not all 10, but that's nearly almost all of them. And really, each Equity Commission member kind of facilitates that session. They ask the questions, and we just listen and get feedback. Only one staff member attends. That's me, except for one where I was sick. And take notes. Staff doesn't interact or answer any questions or ask any questions unless unless there's a question where the facilitator wants us to kind of answer it, like, what resources does the library have? Then we can step in and answer that, but we really try not to engage and just listen. We've had, I've lost count, 6 sessions? 4 sessions. We've had 4 sessions so far, 3 in English, 1 in Spanish. And then we have 2 more sessions coming up, one this September 12th, and that will be in Vietnamese, and it'll be hosted at the Municipal Court from 7 to 8. We'll have a staff member there to help translate and interpret, and then take notes as well, and then we'll get that interpreted in English and get it into a report for everybody, in our large report. On the 25th is another session, and that session is here?
Yes.
At the library. And so we've had, I think each session has had between 4 to maybe 15 participants, depending on the location and kind of who was invited. The Equity Commission members were asked to invite 2 people to each session to kind of help encourage people to show up and attend. After the sessions end, so our last one is this September 25th, we will be posting links to a survey, and the survey is those 10 questions that we've been asking in these sessions, to give an opportunity to those who couldn't attend in person to be able to respond online. But we're waiting until the very last session after to post those links, so we can still encourage people to attend in person. And that will be open for about a week to 2 weeks, depending. Usually we get our most responses within a week, and so if we see that we aren't getting any more responses, we'll close it. And then staff will create a report for the Equity Commission, and that report will kind of go over the responses. We hope that we'll see things that pop out of things that either Equity Commission can work on, or be able to point to what staff is already working on to address some of the concerns that the community has raised. And so that report will be given to this commission in October. The commission will be able to kind of discuss it in October at the October meeting once we decide later on today what date that is. And then in November, we'll have a joint meeting with this commission and our city council to go over that report and discuss what occurred and what we learned. So also within these sessions, we have a sheet that we pass out. It's a demographic sheet. It's completely anonymous. It's just to get an idea of who's attending these meetings, what neighborhood they live in, to make sure we have representation throughout the city. But it's just used to kind of know who we spoke to, but it is anonymous and not shared. We also, it'll be in the report, we also audio record these sessions, but they are not video recorded, and participants are known ahead of time that they're being audio recorded, and it's to use to listen back on for the notes that we have. So our last 2 sessions are this month, and then we'll wrap up. At the last meeting, commission members asked for the notes from the sessions that they helped facilitate. We're still wrapping up those notes. I wanted to make sure I can give you all the notes I had instead of a little bit at a time, unless you prefer a little bit at a time. So we'll get those notes out, so that way you can see the notes and see the report and know if you think something's missing or I got it interpreted it wrong, you can let us know and we can address it.
I would like to, if possible, like some of the notes, just so I can see, like, just because I'm doing the last one, maybe I can, steer the conversation in ways that, not me leading the conversation in that way, but just see where there's gaps and maybe, maybe help people answer questions and stuff.
Is there any way that the 10 questions can be shared? So I can see
Yes.
the questions?
We have a entire outline template, or it's a planning document, so I'll make sure that you get that planning document and you can see there's a script with it. And I'll make sure you have it too, Katrina, because I know it's been a while since I sent it out to everyone. It has like a short little script in it, so we try to start all of the sessions the same way with the same verbiage and information. So it's a small little script. And it has the 10 questions that are asked and the step-by-steps and when all the sessions were. So we'll make sure that you get a copy of that.
Excellent, thank you.
The one this week in Vietnamese, I'm the facilitator, right? And we will have a translator,
Yes,
obviously.
we will.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't.
Confirmed with her today too.
Okay,
that she
good.
is Good to go.
I was good with Spanish, but not with it. Okay, excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we get to hear a presentation from Director of Emergency Operations, Joseph Chacon, Director of Emergency Operations. And this is one I think that we requested be one of the first ones that we listened to.
Well, good evening. It's good to be here. My name is Joseph Chacon. I'm the Director, as you just said, Director of Emergency Services for the city. Just a little bit of my background. I've been with the city since December. Prior to that, I was the police chief in Austin. I did a 25-year career with the Austin Police Department, the last 3 years as police chief. And prior to that, I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and I worked 6 years there as a police officer before coming out here. So it's a bit strange not being a police officer anymore. To be honest, a bit welcome to start a new chapter of my life. But what that experience has given me is a lot of time doing emergency management functions, working in emergency operations centers, and getting that experience that's really crucial for this role. One of the most important things in emergency management is the relationships that you build in the area, in the capital area, and the 10 counties that make up the CapCog. I know, the emergency managers, the police chiefs, city managers, all of that. So that's very good for this. I think it's a benefit for the city of Pflugerville because, we can leverage those resources should we need them. So I'm going to be talking about. Okay, there we go. I'm going to be talking about what I do for the city in kind of 3 different parts. The first and most important part is emergency management. So really that's about making sure that the city has emergency operation plans in place, that we are ready to stand up an emergency operations center should we need to, and that we can keep government going if we have some kind of an emergency. So the continuity of government and the continuity of operations for the city of Pflugerville. I'm the one who's responsible for standing up those emergency operations centers and running them should we need to. I had only been here, like I said, a couple of months when we had a very small winter storm that happened in February, and we stood up an emergency operations center during that time because what happens is the roads will ice over, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of disasters and what kind of emergencies we might face. But that is definitely one that I would categorize as a natural disaster. So storms and tornadoes are examples of natural disasters. The hurricane season that we see in the Atlantic, right now we have Tropical Storm Francine that is in the Gulf of Campeche, is headed towards the Gulf of Mexico. And we do anticipate that it's going to touch Texas, not as bad as Louisiana and some of the other states really to our west, but we will probably see some rainfall out of it. We've seen others that have dumped a lot of rain here. And then with regard to tornadoes, I mean, you saw in 2022 there was a tornado in Round Rock that actually caused quite a bit of property damage. Luckily, nobody was injured in that. These are the ones that we're going to see more often here in the city of Pflugerville, and we have seen, is flooding. We had the Memorial Day floods. We had the Halloween flood. And those are the ones where we can see as well, really it's more around the flooding, but temporary displacement of people from their homes. The city partners really, our emergency operations plan, it falls under the larger umbrella of the Travis County Emergency Operations Plan. There's a number of smaller cities. There's I think over 40 cities in Travis County. The majority of them are within the Travis County Emergency Operations Plan. That plan, we look at things like floods and other natural disasters, and it gives us a blueprint on how we can be prepared for those and what are the resources that we can bring to bear should we need to, should those happen. So we partner with Travis County, and Travis County will set up shelters if we need them, if people are displaced, as well as the American Red Cross. And we have a very good working relationship with Red Cross should that need to happen. The ice storms, we had Winter Storm Uri in 21, Winter Storm Mara last year, and Winter Storm Mara really caused quite a bit of damage to to the trees. Living here in Pflugerville, y'all know that we lost a lot of trees during that storm, and the fallout from that is that all those tree limbs come down, they start blocking the roadways, and then our emergency services cannot get through. So we have to have a debris management plan in place and ready to go if we see that happen. We did enter into a debris management plan just recently, and we actually just last week touched base with that vendor, and we're ready to go if we see something like that again this winter. There's also man-made disasters that can happen. What you see pictured here was the West Texas fertilizer plant explosion that happened in 2013. Tragic, and a lot of people lost their lives during that. Terrorism is also another, whether it's homegrown or it comes in from abroad, but that has struck our country, and it struck near here as well. I was one of the incident commanders in Austin during the 2018 Austin bombing case. And so those are the type of things, we had to stand up an emergency operations center that had over 400 people in it and was operating 24 hours a day while we were working on that case. So we've got to be ready to do those type of things. And I'm glad to say that, I feel like as a city, we're prepared to bring in the resources that we need to handle those kind of things. When it comes to emergency management, these are the 5 kind of guiding principles. FEMA is the one who put the plan together for the incident command structure and the National Incident Management System so that everyone in the country is running on the same basic principles. And this is really all coming out of the 9/11 Commission, the standing up to the Department of Homeland Security that came out of that. Because what we figured out is that, things were happening in other states that this state didn't know what this state, even though the intelligence was there, it was not shared. And so this emergency management plan is really about making sure that we're preventing emergencies to the greatest extent, we're protecting our communities, and that when they happen, we can mitigate the damage that happens during those disasters. After the disaster has been controlled, how do we respond to it? And then how, as a community, are we resilient and we recover? So those are the things that we have in mind, but of course the goal is that we have a community that is prepared and is resilient. Very briefly, just on what we do as far as having plans and doing training. I mentioned that they call it the basic plan. It's the emergency operations plan that is done by Travis County, and we are part of that. We contribute to that plan, and that plan is actually available on both our website and as well as Travis County's website. We contribute to the hazard mitigation plan. So there, what we're really looking at is what are the hazards that we can face. An example is wildfire, right? The wildfire urban interface or wildland urban interface is how the wildlands, and by wildlands I'm talking about like we have tall grasses, we have trees. When it gets dry, when we're in drought, are we facing danger as those butt up against our neighborhoods? And what are we doing to mitigate that? So, so that's one part of the plan. How do we make sure that we have water, enough water for our area this year, next year, and in the years to come? That's in the plan. All those kind of things we're working on as a region so that we don't fall into an emergency where fire is destroying our community or we're without water. Finally, the THIRA. The THIRA is the threat and hazard identification and hang on a second. Threat and hazard identification and risk assessment. So we just finished doing our THIRA for this year. Travis County and Williamson County, because there is a small part of Pflugerville that is in Williamson County. So I get to go to both meetings. It's great. Are each doing their THIRA plan on how we are identifying what the risks are and what resources there might be. And by resources, I'm actually talking about grant funding that comes through Department of Homeland Security and through the Texas Department of Emergency Management to cities, to municipalities, to NGOs, to lots of community partners to help to mitigate those risks. And so we just finished doing that. They should have the THIRA done by the end of the year, and that will be on the website as well. With regard to training, when you see IS, those are independent study courses. You can actually go to FEMA's website and look at these courses and have an idea of the type of, what does an emergency operations center look like? How does it run? What does ICS mean? What is NIMS? All of those things is actually available to the public, and anybody can go through those courses. Every city employee has to do IS 100 and IS 700. I also recommend for our folks that are sitting in emergency operations centers that they're doing the 200 and the 800 course. We offer specialized training. I do an EOC 101 class for our employees, so where I actually, if they've never sat in an emergency operations center, we can acclimate them so that the first time they're sitting there is not when, heck is breaking loose. Any questions so far about anything related to emergency management? Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, because you showed that picture of, it looked like an emergency, like command center or whatever. And I recently did the Citizens on Patrol classes with Pflugerville PD, and we sat in a room that was like a command center. Is that the room? Is there another room?
So that picture looks really great. I wish we had all those things. Yeah. We're not quite that fancy. But probably the room that you sat at, because our emergency operations center is housed at the PD, is probably that same room that you were in. So we have multiple monitors in there. We've got whiteboards, and then it's a, when it's set up for us to use, it's set up in that round table structure, and that's when I will tell people, they're part of the finance section or the logistics section or the operations section, and we'll assign roles in there. And these are folks that are coming out of their regular city roles, and they step into this new role for a temporary period of time to be able to manage the disaster, manage the emergency, and then they go back to their regular roles.
Okay, thank you. Second question, because we're talking about man-made disasters, where do like a mass shooting incident, does that fall under that classification?
It can. It just depends. So typically we refer to it as an active attack, which can be an active shooter. It could be a different, sometimes like in the case of the bomber, that falls under that terrorism or active attack. In that one, we certainly had to stand up an emergency operations center for 19 days. If we have one in which the shooter is neutralized quickly, then we're likely not going to need one for that type of scenario, or we may need one for a very small amount of time. That's typically a law enforcement-led effort, and they will go in, they will, begin the investigation and run search warrants and do all the things they need. Emergency Operations Center is typically for something that is ongoing, so it just depends.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. This is the second part, special events. So the city has a number of special events throughout the year. These are some of the bigger ones. The Slice of Pflugerville has already occurred for this year. We got Deutschenfest coming up next month, and then the Festival of Lights will be in December. My job is to make sure that we're looking at kind of two different things. We're looking at the safety. We want everybody to have a good time, right? But we want everybody to be safe. We want to make sure that we have the law enforcement, parts of it that are taken care of, and that we have plans in place should things go awry. The biggest event that the city actually hosts is 4th of July. And so they will shoot fireworks from near the Typhoon, Texas location, and people will set up all around there. They go into the Costco parking lot, they go into Stonehill, they'll go over to Hendrickson High School parking lot and kind of in that area and in the neighborhoods. When we've done our placer info to see, there's over 40,000 residents that actually come out to watch the fireworks. So that makes it our biggest event. As far as within a kind of a venue, it's easily Deutschenfest. So on that one, we'll have anywhere between 8,000 to 10,000 people at any given time within Pfluger Park and enjoying the festival. So we've got to make sure that we have the plans in place. I will stand up what's called an event operations center. It's a little bit different than an emergency because this isn't really an emergency, it's an event. So it's still an EOC. And then bring in all the people that we need to handle the various aspects to make sure that we keep that event safe. I mentioned we need to have adequate law enforcement. Fire and EMS are partners in this. I'm going to talk a little bit about fire and EMS in a second because that's the third part of my job. But Pflugerville the Pflugerville Fire Department is not, it's not a municipal entity. It's, it is, but it's not City of Pflugerville entity. It's Emergency Services District number 2, right? ESD number 2. And then EMS is a private EMS service that we contract with. The traffic and the mass gathering that I mentioned, like we have to make sure that we can flow traffic, all those 40,000 people that are there for the 4th of July, we've got to be able to flow all of that, so that takes a lot of coordination. And then I put together an event action plan for every special event that we have, share it with the people that need to know. And like I said, I can set up an event operations center, and really it's just doing the emergency management coordination. This is the third and final part of my job, is being a liaison for the Pflugerville Fire Department and for our contract EMS service. So I work, as a matter of fact, I spoke with Chief Nick Perkins from the Pflugerville Fire Department today. I probably talk to him at least once a week about various issues that are going on here in the city. We are working on a wildland fire plan for our community right now, really updating the one that was already there. But what I can tell you, and what's good, is that Chief Perkins, I rely on, just like he relies sometimes on my experience in law enforcement, I rely on his experience in firefighting. He's been doing it for over 25 years. And Pflugerville is in really good shape when it comes to that wildland urban interface and seeing a wildfire that could take out neighborhoods. It's unlikely. As a matter of fact, it's highly unlikely. It doesn't mean it's not impossible. Doesn't mean we won't see people displaced. But we're probably talking a dozen people or a dozen homes, as opposed to whole neighborhoods in some communities that could be affected by that. So we try to really keep up with those things through that hazard mitigation plan that I was talking about earlier. And Pflugerville Fire does an excellent job of managing that threat. We just signed a 4-year contract with Allegiance EMS. They're a private EMS service who's been working in the city for the last 2.5 years under a previous contract. And there are 4 full-time advanced life support ambulances that are stationed in the city 24 hours a day. Our average response time, their average response time for EMS for all of the calls is under 7 minutes. And we want to make sure that on our priority 1, which are the highest acuity calls, those are things like heart attacks, or people who can't breathe and things like that, that they 90% of the time are getting to that call in under 8 minutes. And right now they're meeting that metric. So that's my job. To be clear, I'm not in charge of either one of those entities. I am simply the liaison. I manage the contract for the city for EMS, and I work directly with Chief Perkins along with Chief O'Malley with the Pflugerville Police Department to make sure that we, from a public safety perspective, that we're keeping the city as safe as we can. Any other questions about anything else that I've gone over? Well, here is...
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just giving everyone a chance, so I wasn't hogging up. Well, you're the expert first. I want to acknowledge that. So I don't, I hate to ask questions from I'm not an expert. You're the expert. But I was trying to figure out, in preparation for this meeting and knowing you were going to be on the agenda, what could we add to the conversation if our lens is equity, right? So a quick Google search, just to give you the extent of my knowledge, right? I did land on a document, and I think it's NAACP, and it's focused on if you want to take an equity lens to emergency management, here's what we would recommend. And it addresses things that you touched on with respect to risk assessment, right? And mitigation plans, and making sure that there's voices in the room from the community that can help you identify your blind spots with respect to not only risk assessment, but even what assets do you have in the community to be able to respond or get through it, right, in an emergency. So I guess that would be my question or my comment is I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how much of that is being brought to bear in this emergency management realm, either at the county level or at the local level. I guess it's a question and a request. That's what I would want us to be hopefully, looking at it through that lens.
Well, I think you give me a lot of credit calling me an expert. I feel like my expertise certainly lied in law enforcement, and I would agree with that statement when it comes to the law enforcement realm. Emergency management is much bigger, and you have people who develop, levels of expertise in different areas, certainly. What has been good, like I said, is that I know many of the players. I've already, I'm going to the Homeland Security Task Force meetings. I'm going to our regional planning meetings. As a matter of fact, for our local emergency planning council, I'm heading up the committee on doing exercises related to what happens if we have a major fuel spill that happens here, and that fuel is threatening our waterway, or the fuel catches on fire and it's now threatening a neighborhood. And I'm preparing exercises. I won't say I'm preparing, I'm helping to prepare exercises for not just, the folks that are in my role, but there's people there like folks from Samsung who have, who deal quite a bit with those kind of chemicals. And so I tell you all of that to tell you that within these meetings, there are the opportunities. The meetings are well attended. There's diverse groups of people there, and we're looking at a lot of different issues that are impacting our community. I like to think, coming from the role that I did, that I very much understand what it is to look with an equity lens at our marginalized communities, our disenfranchised communities, and where do those, how can I make sure that voice is heard here in the city of Pflugerville? So making myself available and going to meetings and making sure that we're pushing out good messaging. I work with our communications division to make sure, and when we put them up on all the platforms, and this month is Emergency Preparedness Month, so I just did a message here recently to talk about that too. So we're pushing to make sure we're pushing as much information as we can, making myself available like this by putting my information out just to make sure that we're casting as wide a net as we can with regard to emergency preparedness.
Awesome. I'm happy to email you the document I found,
I
by the way,
appreciate
in
that.
case you're curious.
Thank you.
I guess my second question, and I don't know if it's a question or comment or sort of a combination of both, but I asked about the like a mass shooting incident, but aside from that, just everyday gun violence. It doesn't even have to be a mass shooting, right? With the volume of guns that exist in our world today and in our state in particular. And you mentioned like risk assessment, right? To me, it feels like the deaths attributable to gun violence, whether it's suicide or unintentional or intentional shootings because of people's access to guns. I'm curious what, if anything, you see on the horizon or are doing around encouraging more safe storage, perhaps, as a mitigation strategy. There was a Office of Gun Violence Prevention office established at the federal level, and my understanding is that they have grants, because you mentioned federal grants. So in my view, that seems to be something that shouldn't be ignored, when it comes to like hazard mitigation or risk threats. I've had conversations with Chief Perkins. I will have conversations with the police, just because I feel like this is an area where the numbers don't lie. Like, it's the leading cause of death of children in our country, guns are. And there's things we can do about it, particularly with safe storage. The city last month had a proclamation. Lock Arms for Life came and did a proclamation declaring August, I think, Gun Safety Awareness Month or something. So those are positive steps that I think can be built upon further across the spectrum of emergency management, whether that's the police, fire department, you. So I don't know if you have anything to share there or would be open to, continuing to look at that.
Yeah, so, I partnered as a police chief in Austin with Lock Arms for Life several years ago, and then, I know that partnership still continues today. And I was arguing, I was one of the kind of lone voices actually in the room that was not talking about, wasn't necessarily talking about like, hey, we need more laws around gun control. It was about safe storage, because I would explain, you can go up and down 35 to motel and hotel parking lots, and if you see a pickup truck, probably has a gun in it, and the thieves know that too. So we've got to stop that. You have to be a responsible gun owner if you're going to own a gun, and make sure that it's properly secured. Having said that, just so you know where I'm coming from, that's exactly how I feel about it. It really is, the loudest voice is always going to be the police chief in that space. They're the ones that kind of have they have the expertise, they have the authority, and certainly have the authority to take away someone's freedom should they violate the law around that. We just saw that happen at our most recent school shooting in Georgia. The dad got arrested too. So, I'm certainly always willing to support that and add my name on resolutions and things that we can do around safe gun storage. But I think it's a good idea probably, to engage our police department in that conversation as well.
All right. I had one more question, and it's not about guns, because I think it was probably Corey that was interested in understanding like warming centers in our community, like when we do have freezes, short freezes, prolonged freezes, what have you. Like, I know I had someone in my own network reach out to me and tell me, Claudia, there's a man sleeping in his car you know, down the street and temperatures are gonna drop. And it felt like there was no resources. So where does that fall in the realm of like priorities for dealing with those kinds of natural events?
Right. So warming centers in the winter, cooling centers in the summer. What we've done, the philosophy essentially that we've adopted as a city is to take the things that we have, including the library, which the director has been wonderful about. We'll let people come in and warm up in the winters as long as the library is open, right? As long as they're not creating a disruption or anything like that for the people that are coming in to be able to come in, as well as the recreation center. So they will allow them to come in, and we had, we certainly discussed, do we need to go outside of normal business hours? Part of that is, I mentioned that we partner with Travis County, and Travis County will open warming centers, and we can help to facilitate transportation to those warming centers if we need to, or at the very least give them directions and let them know, here's where the warming centers are. But it's, we're kind of leveraging the bigger network of folks that we have at Travis County to help with that problem as well.
I don't know that I could be wrong, but it didn't feel like it was widely communicated. Like I really didn't know. I felt like I'm in the know, or I have access to resources. So how do people that don't have access to resources know? And
I think that is always going to be the issue. Like when we do after action reports on all of these, and in almost all of them, communication is always an issue. Is how can we better communicate? And you have to go to people where they are, right? So we'll put things out on social media, because social media is so prevalent now, and making sure that we're getting it on various platforms. But if people don't look at it, and then later on they're like, well, nobody told me about that. It's like, how can we make sure that message? One of the things that I would certainly encourage people to do is to sign up for PF Alerts, which is run on a platform called Civic Plus, Civic Ready, I think. I can't remember which one, they just changed their name. But it gives you alerts, and we can push that kind of information, including, hey, here's where our warming and cooling centers are, or here's in Travis County. Here is the information about there's an accident at this intersection, avoid the intersection. Those kind of things that are that you have to have the information timely. We try to push that out on that platform, as well as there's Warren Central Texas is another. That's ready.gov. That's the kind of the bigger state and national platform for pushing out information.
So one of the winter storms, I know like a major cell phone provider was out, and a lot of like my neighborhood and just people were like, I can't call anybody, I can't check on anybody, I don't know how to get resources and things like that. Is there anything in place that you can communicate the information besides, like, say they can't have access to their internet, they don't have access on their phone for making, calling people and stuff? How do you get information out?
It's an issue.
Yeah.
We certainly don't. What I'll say is we don't have all the answers yet. And what we try to do, and these are the tabletop exercises that we'll do, right? And we'll say, hey, guess what? Your internet just went down, cell service just went down. How are you going to communicate? The message that I just put out here recently is an emergency kit with either a hand crank or a battery operated radio, right? So that you can get emergency information that way in case of that failure. So we try to put that information out so that people, but again, it's kind of on the individual families to get the things that they need so that they can stay in contact with the rest of the community.
I guess that's something we can all do is share your video of the emergency kit.
Yes.
I've seen that on Instagram. So.
Yeah. I had more people come up to me this last week and just tell me about that than I think I ever had when I was in my press conferences as the chief. It was hilarious. But it's because they're all, I'm here in Pflugerville. I've been living in Pflugerville for 25 years. So, I know this community, and I think people just like seeing that. So.
Yes.
So when y'all are taking notes and stuff, if you want to tell your friends and family that live in Pflugerville, you can text PF Alerts to 38276, and that'll sign you up for our text alert system. You can also go online to pflugervilletx.gov/connect, and you can customize what alerts you get online through that as well.
I think on that, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think on that note, I wanted to ask, has there been any work, because when I think about it, to your point, individuals need to also consider what they need to do for emergency planning. However, I think a lot can be gained by just how the police department also works with the community to share those insights, kind of like when they do first night out to kind of share about safety. Is there any plans in place that you know of that is doing something similar to that by reaching out to community, bringing them in and telling them about ways that they can get communication about and building resiliency plans within their own community?
Well, I don't know that's necessarily specifically about that, and I think you bring up a great point. You know, do we have an opportunity to do something like that? I think it was this past Saturday was public safety day, and fire, EMS, everybody was out there, the police was out there. We have National Night Out that's coming up on October the 1st, where you're gonna have police officers that are gonna be stopping by the registered parties and can talk about it, but I don't know, their messaging really is around the whole emergency management or the whole emergency preparedness piece. So you planted a seat with me to be able to think about, like, how can I maybe even put out some of those, you know, can we host a meeting and you can just come and we can do this, we can talk about it, and I can give you the resources or give you ideas about what you can do as a family to prepare yourself. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think when it comes to being in Texas is pretty unique, right? Because we deal with extreme heat, and now with climate change, a lot of extreme cold. And when we had Uri that happened, it really lit a fire under a lot of people and a lot of concern and anxiety when it gets to these extreme temperatures of when the power is out, how long is the power going to be out? What do I need to do? What happens if something like this happens and I have different members of family in school and what have you? So I think that's another way to bring the community in by offering them those resources, because like we said, social media has got lots of noise. So we can't ever assume that people are going to pick up that information, but that one-to-one contact, knowing that they're getting information from people who understands and live that all the time, to be able to get those questions answered can lower the anxiety and actually motivate people to move within their own community to build resiliency.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, with regard to social media, where are you getting your feeds from, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to the City of Pflugerville Municipal Government's website, these are the kind of things that we're pushing out all the time. But like you said, depending where is that in the stack of stuff that you're looking at, and it can get lost very easily.
I think my other question too is, hearing about the response time is roughly around 8 minutes, which is great. Do you know if both the fire department and the EMS collects data on those response times by zip code?
Well, the City of Pflugerville is one zip code.
Okay.
78660, right? So they don't break it down any further than that. What they do, so all of our dispatching, which is where we're pulling all of these times that I'm talking about, is through CTEC. It's the Combined Transportation Emergency Communication Center. It's in Austin. So Austin dispatchers will pick up the phone when you call 911, and they say police, fire, EMS, or mental health services. And then they'll transfer you wherever you need to go, but they house it there. And so what they can do, I know what they can do, is they can geofence an area.
Okay.
And they can say, what does it look like here? Because that's what we asked them to do for Pflugerville, and that's where, when I made my presentations to council about response times, that's what we did.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 78664, which I'm in a weird, Round Rock, but also Pflugerville address, so yeah, it's weird for me, but I get your point.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to see is, I think that's when we talk about it's a good example about looking things through an equity lens, and I think you and me kind of get that, you have to find out where the gaps are, or if there's some changes in different areas that are not receiving the same service where they probably should. So I think looking at data like response time, the different type of emergency service plans, looking at those areas by those particular geofences where we know that income levels are a little bit lower, there's more seniors in certain areas. A lot of equity lenses by looking at who is the most vulnerable and making sure that we have plans in place to protect those people.
Yeah, and with regard to EMS service, you know, the fire department, they build the stations based on call load, right? I know that EMS service will stage very, very similar. I mean, they have an idea of where they're getting the highest call loads. Unfortunately, a lot of those calls are coming in the, you know, this lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, and so they'll stage near there because they're more likely to be dispatched there. So that's how, I mean, it's important for them because they have a contract metric that they need to meet on hitting those times, but it's just like, you want to be a good human, right? And try to get to those, be in those areas where you know you're the most needed. And you know, working with them, I really feel like they do subscribe to that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, next item is discuss and consider action on remaining meeting dates for 2024. And that says me. So we need to talk about our meeting for
October.
October.
Yeah, I believe it was moved to October 25th at the Justice Center.
I have reserved, because the last conversation was around October 28th, that last Monday in October. So we went ahead and reserved the Justice Center in case that is what the commission wanted to move forward with. Claire said the typical meeting would be held on the 14th, but the city is closed for an in-service day that day.
Got it.
So that's why we're looking at moving the meeting in October.
Okay.
So October 28th, the courtroom is reserved if the commission would like to host your meeting that day. Jennifer will be out of town, but I will be the one to take the meeting minutes that day for her.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And our presentation, or our meeting with council is when?
So we have it set for Tuesday, November 12th during the council's work session. So those typically start at 5 p.m. Right now, we don't see anything else on the agenda, but if something pops up, we'll let you know if we anticipate it starting a little after 5 or what that might look like. But right now, it's held for Tuesday, November 12th at 5 at the Justice Center as well.
So if we meet on the 28th, like that's where when would we get the report of the?
My goal is as soon as possible in October. So before the 28th, I would at least get an email to you.
Okay.
So once the meeting ends on the 25th, my priority will be working on the report and wrapping it up to get it to you before the 28th.
Okay.
So second week of October is my goal. Gives me that first week.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that October 28th works for me. I don't know about the rest of the
I have
commission.
to check my calendar, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll have to check the same. Should be fine. I'll check.
So let's, I guess, pencil it in.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we can confirm. Okay.
And then your December meeting, just so that
9.
you're thinking of it the 9th, and then you'll have a meeting in January on the 13th. As we look ahead at holidays and
January what?
January 13th, Monday,
Oh, I
January
thought you
13th.
said that was on
You're like, we need that.
There you go. If it was the 3rd, I would recommend maybe
Pushing.
finding another date
Yeah.
than January.
Yeah, ain't nobody.
Oh, I was gonna decline, I won't be there.
All right. Okay. Excellent. Do we need to take any action, or that was just discussion?
I think it's just discussion.
Okay. All right. I guess we can adjourn. Yeah. Yes.
One question.
Not adjourn?
I'm sorry. What for that session where what is our success goal for that in meeting, sharing and presenting with the city council? Is it just our findings from the listening tour, pretty much?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I think ultimately our plans for the following year likely will be shaped by the findings that come from that, but I don't think November is when we put out our plan for the year, right?
Has there been any other data gathering exercises by this commission besides the listening tour?
In this capacity, no. This commission in previous renditions, past commission members, I think Claudia, you probably our only one that was on the past ones where they met with departments and asked questions, but in the capacity of going out to the community, no. This is the first time.
That's all the questions I got. Thank you.
All right. Adjourn?